All right. All right. You see, this time I saw the timer. I saw
Got
the
it.
countdown, so I'm ready. Plus, I think everybody should know that there's been a couple of interesting things happen in the recording of this episode. The first thing is that about 5 minutes in, my internet went out, and then that would have sounded like really weird for you guys because Kevin was talking to me and I couldn't hear anything. And then Kevin's internet went out, or his phone is
Something
dead.
like that.
Yeah, and Kevin had a dog that just he still has the dog, but the dog would not shut up. And so we've moved the dog from one place to another. And we're going to see if that
Yeah,
works.
he's down here with me now. So hopefully that worked.
Yeah. All right, good
Yeah,
cuz
that was bad.
Jesus, that was brutal. It would have been bad
All
for
right,
everyone. All right,
you want
let's do it. Five, four, three, two, one. Talking about faith in all of its different forms and facets, and
there's a saying that every saint has a past, but that means that every sinner has a future.
music, laser beams. All right, let's go. All right, so now that we're back, I never know what to do. Do we like to give a visual cue that we're coming back, so you know where to cut the intro
I
in?
think you
We'll
should
just
do a
see.
dance.
I'm not gonna do that. Let's just
Okay.
stick to business. All right, so this is the Wandering Home podcast. My name is Tyler, and I'm just a regular dude who's here to ask questions about faith and all kinds of stuff. And I talk with my buddy Kevin.
What's
Hey,
up?
Kevin, what's up? Yeah, so it's us again, and we're in like probably like episode 7 of going through some of our blog posts that are on the wanderinghome.com that Kevin's been writing. I think they're really interesting, and today we're sort of shaking it up, I would say.
Yeah, well,
The last couple of episodes have sort of been related to like addiction recovery, the program that we both worked at years back, and today we're pivoting to some. What's the headline? Um, what's the
it's uh
headline?
it's warrior leaders and kingdom leaders.
Cool. So it's a blog post that kind of explores, I would say, two like distinct leadership styles, right? So you have the warrior leaders and the kingdom leaders. We kind of use historical examples, biblical examples to illustrate the differences of each
Yeah.
one. And, Kevin, I think like before we really, maybe we can go straight meat and potatoes, but let's break it down for everybody, like how you are sort of looking at the warrior leaders versus the kingdom leaders. And we'll just start
Yeah,
right
so
there.
I've always, I don't know, had to think about leadership because of ministry and different jobs that I had. Um like now I'm a service manager at a plumbing shop, and so still in a leadership capability, but not necessarily in ministry. But I've always been drawn to more of the like influencers type, leaders, like um gosh, like I referenced in the blog Winston Churchill, who had like a ton of like crazy speeches and stuff, and
Mhm.
um, like those type of guys, you know what I mean, and girls,
Yeah.
who can lead from that type of motivator. But there's really, I guess, when you look at the two profiles, personality profiles of King David and King Solomon, they're both leaders. They're both in two different time periods, but they lead in really different ways and really in two different contexts.
Okay. Give us
Yeah, so like
examples. Also, who was King David the king of? What was he the
Yeah,
king
so
of?
he was the king of Israel before it ever got really structured and organized. I mean, they're really just a nomadic people in,
Uh-huh.
modern, well, maybe not modern day.
What kind of population do you think we're talking here? 50
Uh,
thou? 200?
I think scripture tells it because they do a census. But to be honest with you, I don't know that number. Um,
What are we even doing here if you don't know the number? Well, look, we're sitting on a computer.
yeah,
Let's look at it.
find out. Fun.
What would I say? How many people were
Yeah, how
in?
many people were in Israel during David's time? Google that thing.
Yeah, okay. So this one's easy. Just over 5 million. That sounds like you're going to have to be pretty fucking organized to me, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but Moses had tons and tons of people being let out in Egypt, and you wouldn't necessarily. I mean, I guess they were organized, um, but
I'm
not in the
kidding, man.
sense of like what Solomon did. Like Solomon did some crazy stuff. Um, did a great job in trade, did a great job in building up the society and building the temple and all. He did a lot of things, but he really
Yeah.
wasn't going to war. I mean, um,
So King David was in
oh yeah,
war
absolutely.
times
He
leader.
was, and that was the reason why Saul didn't like David, is because he was getting so um, famous for all the things that he was doing, for all the people that he was killing in battle. I mean, he's
Was he aggressive?
um
Was he
no,
aggressive?
he wasn't aggressive. Saul was, but he David wasn't aggressive. Saul wanted to take him out, just you know, because, well, I mean, I guess the prophet actually anointed David to be king before Saul was not, what, before his kingship ended. So that probably made things a little dicey, um, but yeah, he was a warrior. I mean, he was a motivator. Me and you were talking earlier about this, but he had his mighty men that, like, he just, like, in passing said something about wanting something to drink from a well, and his men, like, fought through the enemy's, like, line to go get him a cup of water. I mean, that's pretty badass. That's some motivation. You know what I mean? That's a motivational leader. When I think about, like, situations like that, I think about, there's a scene in Band of Brothers where, like, the lieutenant, he he runs before some smoke flares go off, and like, there's a private that's in the foxhole with him. He tries to go with him, like, he's so motivated by this guy, going to fight the enemy, and a sergeant has to literally tackle the private, and, like, as soon as the flares go off, like, all these men try to catch up to the lieutenant because he's such a
Well,
badass. He just motivates the guys,
mhm.
and that's
Yeah.
the way I've always seen leadership. Mainly because I guess that's my personality, but uh, when you look at those two profiles, you see that there's different types of leaders. And, sometimes a leader is more of a motivator, and then sometimes a leader is more of an organizer and provides security.
Do you think that do you think that do you think that Solomon had it in him to be a wartime leader? Or do you think that what do you think about the statement, if I were to make it, that God puts the right people in the right places at the right time,
Yeah.
right? Because do we, is it more like that, or is it more like, hey, Solomon could have done it, but he wasn't in the middle of war times, or King David could have been just like Solomon, but it was in the middle of war times when he was leading.
Um, I think it's more providential. I think that God knows us. Obviously, he makes us. He creates us for certain times, and I mean, he told Esther that, you know. So,
What did he
well,
say to
that
Esther?
you've been made for such a time as this. That this is, you know, when she and the totally different story. And don't want to get in.
It feels like a motivational speech to me too, though. I guess was Jesus an influencer?
Well, this was
Must have
that was
been.
actually Esther was actually Old Testament, so she saved the people in her own way as well. Um, so I think there's a ton of influencers in the Bible, obviously, but there are different types of leaders, you know, like the Solomons and the quiet, you know,
Yeah.
why, and I don't necessarily know if he was a quiet leader. He was a very wise leader. He was a very strategic leader. I mean, you think about, you know, some of the stuff that he did, like with the story of dividing the baby up. You know that story?
Mm, no.
Yeah. So two women, they fall asleep. Babies are in their beds. One rolls over on a baby, and the baby dies. Um, and so
Wow.
the other woman has a live baby. So the woman who had the dead baby, she decides to swap babies. And of course, then the
Oh
mom,
my God.
mom realizes, and they go before Solomon, and Solomon says, "Okay, I know what to do. We'll cut the baby in half and give you each half of it." And so yeah, so not real mom says, "Yeah, let's do it," you know, and real mom says,
Wow.
give her the
No
baby.
way.
You know what I mean? Like, give her the baby. We're good. And
Wow.
Solomon says, okay, that's the mom. You know, um, so pretty damn smart. You know, I mean, like pretty witty. Um, you know, he
Yeah.
was able to think.
So
You know, um, so yeah.
so okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, you know, I think that you know maybe David doesn't respond that way. You know what I mean? Like maybe he doesn't
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
understand that in that you know or see things in the same
Yeah.
way as Solomon does. So I think that God places us at different times and different purposes. I think the whole point of the blog though was that you know we don't necessarily need to like pigeonhole leadership based on a certain type of personality. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean,
Like just
yeah.
because somebody's an influencer doesn't mean they're a leader.
Yeah. Influencer. We're talking about the disc
Yeah,
profile,
yeah,
just so
yeah.
that everybody's,
Yeah, yeah.
who's
So I've
listening to
taken a ton of
the disc profile
I've
test.
taken a ton of
Yeah.
disc profiles and I always come up as an influencer uh and I can see that in my personality. I mean, I'm talkative, I'm optimistic, yada yada yada. Um, you know, all the different things, but I'd also say that like sometimes people assume that I'm a leader or, you know, just because I can talk or I can convey a message or different things like that. And I don't necessarily think that personality has to be the leader. Is that good that he's a leader at times? Yeah. Or he or she. Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be a leader. In the same way with somebody who has a different personality type, like one that focuses on steadiness or, you know, dominance or, you know, whatever the case may be, it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, that they're not a leader or that they are a leader. And that there's some very strong qualities in every personality. And so that's really what I was looking at, you know, and thinking about when I wrote that was that, um, you know, there were two guys that did some great things, but they came from two very different personalities. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You talked about Churchill. You talked about Churchill. in the blog. Now, Churchill was chosen kind of like during a time of crisis, probably because of, was it his smarts or was it his leadership, right? Because even if you look at the biblical parallels to it, like David was kind of chosen because of his heart, right? Solomon's chosen for his wisdom, right? So, what's like there's this element of timing, like, lead when it's your time to
Yeah.
lead. Um,
Churchill wanted
you know
to
what I mean? Like maybe
Churchill
understanding,
wanted to
yeah.
lead before it was his time to lead, and that was kind of a weird thing of the way he got into it. And I kind of shared that in the blog, but like, he wasn't elected like originally, and
Yeah.
the only way that
Yeah.
he actually got in the position was because other dude resigned, you know, and
Mm.
and
What do you think about leaders like this in churches? Like, have you been to a church where you've seen like one church go through both of these types of leaders, or like, um, what does a church feel like when their pastor is the warrior type of leader versus a church that has the kingdom type of leader? The church experience, I guess. I'm curious.
well, I would say one negative thing could be, um, typically influencers are going to be the pastors that are like for plants, for startups, and they're good for motivating people. They're good for growing a church. Um, in the pastoral context, I can say that the influencer can be dangerous because he can influence and he can have an ability to speak and to engage and be charismatic, but he may not have the character that he needs to be a pastor.
Oof, are you inherently saying that influencers don't have the
No, not at
right
all. Not at
character?
all. Not
There's a huge, massive character flaw
no,
with
no, no.
all
That's not what I'm
influencers.
saying. Maybe me.
You're on the edge, buddy. You're on the
No,
edge. You're riding it's a
no,
thin
what I'm
line,
saying
bro.
is in ministry, a lot of times the influencer personality is can be a huge draw because a lot of the qualities that it has are are very key to ministry, or at least the way we define ministry. You know,
Uh
and
huh. Uh huh.
so a lot of times churches will define a preacher by the way he speaks. You know, like he's
Hmm.
entertaining, or he's charismatic. He's not boring, and so they
Mm-hmm.
think that he's a great
Right.
leader. But is he a great leader? Is he just
Yeah, I feel like that's only half of the
Yeah, I don't even know
equation.
if that's
I
half.
mean, I feel like you need to
I
be
think
both,
that's
right?
a I think that's
Yeah.
a small percentage of what you need to be as a pastor and a ministry leader. And so I think sometimes because we define that, I mean it's almost like saying, like, because a worship leader can sing really well or play a guitar really well, that he's a great, person that leads worship. Is that true? No, it's not
Yeah.
true. It might mean he's talented. It might mean that he's
Right.
gifted, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's a great leader, you know? Um,
Hmm.
and so I think sometimes, you know, I mean, this may get into a even deeper discussion, but I think leadership, if you look at and I talked about this a little bit more on another blog, but leadership really uh, should be judged by character and example rather than talent. And that's what's so crazy, man, about church sometimes. Church has it so like sometimes flipped, like at least in the American church, um, that like if you look at the Bible, And the way that Paul tells, Titus and Timothy how to pick elders and deacons, it has nothing to do with talent, you know? It has zero to do with talent. It has everything to do with character. And I feel like sometimes that gets put on the back burner when we're measuring like guys for ministry. And that's not just like a vocation problem. That's sometimes can be a whole like church problem. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I
somebody
think
like
so.
how do we define what a great pastor is? You know?
I don't think that they
Yeah.
really do. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that I've gotten to talk to my in-laws about it, 30 plus year whatever Methodist reverends, and I really think that you just kind of get placed, at least in the Methodist church. Like literally you're guaranteed a spot. Like you sign on to the church and then they're like we're going to put you
Yeah.
somewhere. But I mean there's no way like out of college these people are being vetted for like their ability to truly lead a church. So what they end up doing is like having to take over youth groups and stuff like that. But still like they don't you really only get fired for misconduct. Like it's really about them finding people that want to serve the church. Of course you have to have the degree to be able to lead one, as a pastor.
Isn't that weird too?
But they're gonna try and use every resource that they can. They're not like turning people away because of their soft skills or like ability to
Isn't
speak.
that weird though that that like somebody wants to be a minister, and so the first place that they
Yeah.
put them is it's like, oh, you wanna be a minister? Well, let's
Let's put you through the fucking gauntlet.
not that. Let's put you with the kids.
Dude, that's the
Well,
worst.
it's like, hey, we don't know about your character yet, so let's just throw you in with the kids.
That's the biggest that's got to be the toughest challenge of
Yeah,
character
but dude,
possible.
it's like, wouldn't that be the last place you would put somebody?
Oh, well, yeah, now that you frame it like that, I guess I
Like,
get what you're
like
saying.
that's where, that's where people are forming their faith. That's where people are, you know what I mean? Like that is a pivotal,
Yeah.
foundational time. And we're like, oh, well, he can practice with the kids.
Yeah, I think at that point they trust that that you've got the chops to be able to like teach it right and understand it and
Maybe.
all that.
Yeah,
I
I
get what
don't
you're
know.
saying. I was a youth pastor and that was a huge mistake the church made. And that only lasted like, 6 months and I was fried. I was like, dude, no. The kids were telling me if I have to eat pizza rolls one more time, I'm quitting
Oh,
youth group.
terrible.
And like I was like, okay. They're just kind of running amok, doing whatever they want. And I ultimately I didn't have good enough I didn't maybe I didn't ask for enough
Hmm.
help. And that's where like things really got tough because if you're gonna even though you're in charge of a youth group or you're in charge of a church, so much of the operations you can't cover it all. Like you have to be the organizer. Like at that point, who cares how encouraging or enthusiastic? I mean, how much of the influencer type rally cry speaker you are on Sunday.
Yeah,
You know,
but
I I would rather have somebody who can run the church and run it right. You know what I mean? I want somebody who understands like all the financials, yada 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 yada. And I would trade that for somebody who like every time I listen to him, I'm like,
inspired.
woo!
But
Yeah,
you
I
know
mean,
what's weird though is that like I don't know. Now that I'm even thinking about this, like I mean, obviously those things are important, right? I mean, you want somebody that's organized, you want somebody and then you want somebody that's going to be motivational. But um, that should be the very last thing we're thinking about. You know, like the first thing.
My family always said we're gonna find the best, like our favorite, like teacher, not our favorite speaker. We changed churches a
But for
couple
teaching,
times.
I just had. I think
Yeah.
what made me think about this was this past weekend we were at a volleyball tournament, and there was a guy that was sitting beside me that used to be my. It was actually my old football coach, and he was down in a town like South Alabama. We were talking about his church, and he was like, "Yeah, the pastor's been there for 15 years." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And he said, "Yeah, that's not really common." I was like, "Yeah, yeah." And he's like, because, people get tired of what they have to say.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Dang, dude, like, I that really is kind of the way that it is. It's like, all right, you know, it's almost like your Netflix season, It's like, all right, I've watched I've watched 8 seasons of this, show. I'm done with it. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Hmm.
done with
Yeah,
I'm going to the
I
next
get
one.
it. You can only say so much before you kind of start to sound like a broken record, maybe if you're not really
Yeah,
proactive about
but
it.
the problem though with it is why, dude. Sorry,
Shut that dog up,
sorry,
Kevin. Golly. It's okay. What's
Benny.
his name?
Yeah, he just
Benny.
wants me to pet him. Why? Like, I've forgotten where I was going with that.
Look, don't worry about it. Look. Don't worry about it, Kevin. I think we've had a pretty good conversation, right? We've talked faith and leadership styles. We've talked about leadership, calling, and timing. We've talked about biblical parallels between warrior leaders and kingdom leaders. If anybody gets a chance and you care enough, go to the wanderinghome.com, check out the post. And most importantly, check out the artwork on the post. And I've got this pulled up here for anybody who's watching. I'm not even playing with you guys. This is the reason why we're talking about this tonight. And I'm just gonna share my window here for everybody to see. This is the cover art. Now, I could give you a second, but for those who are watching, you basically have King David, who's a wartime king, to the left, and you have King Solomon to the right. And you know what you should find is the prompt for how they made this, Kevin. We should have a laugh about that. But in the center is a big blueprint, I imagine because
Yeah,
Solomon was a builder. On the to the right of Solomon are people standing kind of at arms. They look like they're in a military. And then to the left is King David. He's got a huge sword and army. And this guy, this this like this guy's got a rocket launcher, and he's got fucking RPGs. And also, and to the right, he's about to shoot it into like the Parthenon, which I think is definitely not right as far as timeline goes. But as if that weren't enough, ChatGPT decided to put like a Black Hawk helicopter on the top.
dude, David
So,
was so
so we've
badass.
got people from Israel fighting Romans on the ground, shooting RPGs at the Parthenon in Greece, all the while being bombed overhead and shot down by. So where are we, man? It's a time. It's just a. This is an absolute gem. So go on to thewanderinghome.com and check it out. Kevin, you gotta like drop in the comments or something like
Yeah.
that. The ChatGPT uh, prompt that you gave it because
Well,
I gotta hear it.
we would like your artistic criticisms too on it. Like we want to hear what you think's going on in that picture.
Yeah,
So if you're listening to this, you know, go to I tell you what you need to do. Go to the Facebook page, subscribe. You'll get all the content that we're doing on a weekly
hmm
basis.
I just gotta follow. It's not even as intense as subscribing, right?
Oh,
Follow is
just
such a
follow.
more
Yeah,
generous word. Yeah,
just gotta
dude, we just
follow.
gotta. All you gotta do is
But
follow it.
on
That's it.
that, what
Hmm.
we'd like to
That's
do is
easy.
to hear from you on the post with that blog. My dog is acting crazy tonight, and
That's why we gotta cut it. Plus, I'm going to
for
Culver's
the
for
ice cream.
the concrete custard. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They call
Look at
it
this dude right here.
custard, and I don't really know
Look
what
at
the
that
difference
dude.
is.
He's crazy,
Yeah,
man. He's
yeah. He looks crazy. Everybody can hear him breathing right now, so we're all getting to know Benny pretty well.
sorry.
It's okay. Maybe we should
All
just
right,
cut it,
dude.
man. That's it. I mean, we
All
talked
right,
for
man.
30 minutes.
Well, you. All right, go
All
get
right, I
some ice
gotta
cream.
go. Bye. Okay.
Dude.